Yes.
Sicily being the hub.
That's right.
If he had touched on it, what?
Who had touched on it?
If Frank Zappa had touched on the gun story, then it must have been very short.
No, he didn't, because it was a surprise to hear it from Pauline. I'd never heard of it. Nobody's heard of it. She reveals it. In a way, maybe that's where Frank's an old-fashioned spiritual person. He doesn't brag about those kind of things that he did,
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say something. You mentioned just before that. What was it?
That his dad always wanted to write a history of the world.
If I've come across. There was something came out of Sicily. I think at around the time of Jesus or before then. That's the third Jesus. Let's point people out. We don't believe it's just one Jesus, according to Ion. There was a culture in the southern part of Italy, and I can't remember what it was, but Sicily was important at one point. It did start something. I can't remember right now what it was. It's not so far-fetched, and if you're an Italian and you hear about Sicily's history, you would say what Zappa's father would say, I think there was a couple of
you're saying that the father probably knew something about it?
Yeah, like in Italy, it was probably well known. Yeah, the wheel. They invented the wheel in Sicily or something, but there was something important that came out of Sicily, and just read that a few months ago in some book, but I don't remember now. Why should I remember? Google probably has it, right? So, I think that's the end of the letters that Carl Franzoni stimulated. Now, let's anything else to say?
I heard you mention Peter Zappa, too.
Yeah, Peter Stafford. That name's familiar. I bet you if you Google him, he comes up.
No, Peter Zappa. Did I hear you say Peter Zappa?
No, Peter Stafford. He's the guy who objects to Carl's anti-LSD stand.
Oh.
I mean, this guy writes a letter, Uncle Tom, and he quotes Stafford as someone out there promoting LSD, and he agrees with Peter Stafford and not Carl Franzoni.
Okay, so Peter Stafford was an American writer and author of the Psychedelic Encyclopedia.
There you go.
He was also the co-author.
What year did that come out? What year did that come out?
September. Let me see.
February.
He was the editor. It doesn't say what year, just that he co-authored a book of LSD, The Problem-Solving Psychedelics, and other books on psychedelics. He was editor of Crawdaddy from 1969 to 1970.
Okay, hold it there. Yes, Crawdaddy, started by Paul Williams, I think his name, was the first rock magazine, and they were like fans of Dylan. 66, 67, Richard Meltzer wrote for them. It was the beginning, the first, and then the Rolling Stone bypassed them. But Peter Stafford, was a rock critic. If he was and he might have been I think Paul Williams might have left by 69, went to a commune. So that's why Stafford took over in 69. Now, remember on Bob Fest, when Zen Woman called in? Remember Zen Woman, or whatever she called herself?
Yeah.
She was someone who was just getting interested and wanted to know a lot, and she was calling, wanted to talk to people privately.
Yeah, she would come from time to time onto chat, but she didn't stay long.
Right. Didn't stay long. She talked to me during Bob Fest, or around that time. She was a close friend of Paul Williams, who started Crawdaddy, and she wanted to talk about how great of a guy he was.
So she was in that scene too with Frank Zappa?
No, this Zen woman, I think, was younger and met the Crawdaddy people years later. Met Paul Williams, years later. I don't think she was too young. It seemed to me she was more of a 70s person, probably.
Hey, speaking of her, there was a post you had up on the dupes, and you said another something left dupes too early.
Yes.
That woman of the switchwords, the author of the switchwords. But was she here in Ion?
The author of the switchwords. What's switchwords?
The link that you had it said that she was the author.
That was Liz Bean. Liz Bean.
Yeah, Liz Bean.
Yeah, she was selling, saying your thoughts determine your behavior, and it would be wonderful if you read her book and understood sort of a watered down version of what Ion says. Yeah, so they don't stay around. And I was assuming that she heard Ion, got a few wisdoms, and then wrote a book on it. And I would say she left too early because if she stayed around, she'd find out Ion didn't mean what he said and what you thought he said.
Yeah, it says another lazy bum leaves Ion them too quickly. So when I clicked on that link, it says that she's the author of that book, but before her, there were others, mainly this one guy who came up with these switch words, and he said that if you repeat them over and over, then they'll make things happen. Like, say, for example, you lose your keys and you're looking for them. You just say reach, reach, reach for a few times, and you find them. So that was way before her time. I don't know how she's saying that she's the author for that.
And so her jargon is switch words. You switch yourself with this idea that your thoughts you think the thoughts. It doesn't say you speak them out loud. It doesn't seem that way.
You can, you say them. You say the words. You can say them to yourself, but you say the words.
Oh, okay. Autogenics. Well, that's ionic. What?
Autogenics. Where
maybe. I don't know what that is, but sounds like something that you would have come across in the last 10 years.
Yeah, pretty recently too, but it sounds very much like what Eliza's talking about, because autogenics is where you repeat to yourself certain things, and it sets into place. Yeah. So
now, Ion, you could say, is included in that idea, but Ion develops it in another way, richer, deeper.
Got it. Okay.
And I'm saying that woman didn't hang around long enough to get the deeper part of Ion's teachings or wisdom or example or hologramic effect.
Okay.
So you were saying that she was once involved with Ion?
No, I don't know, but somebody first suggested that she was. Somehow probably got that message from Ion, but that's assuming Ion's the only one who puts that out, but that's not true. There's other previous guys that Yuri was just talking about, autogenics, that said that, quote, wisdom, unquote. Okay, so let me read you. See, Kim Fowley is a interesting character in this LA scene. You got Vito and you've got Kim Fowley. Let's just say, bring up, you can look up Kim Fowley, Fowley, on the wiki, Eliza, and you can read along with me. There'll be Wikipedia. Born in 1939 on Marsh McLuhan's birthday, July 21st, died on January 15th, Captain Beefheart's birthday in 2015. So he just died in January. So he was an American record producer, singer, and musician. He is best known for his role behind a string of novelty and cult pop rock singles in the 1960s and for managing the Runaways in the 1970s. In addition, he's credited with being the inspiration behind promoter John Brower's call to John Lennon that resulted in the last-minute appearance of the Plastic Ono Band at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival on September 13, 1969, where Fowley was the MC. At this event, Fowley also created the iconic experience of having the audience light matches and lighters to welcome a nervous John Lennon to the stage. So that whole thing of light matches and lighters, apparently he started. He has been described as, quote, as one of the most colorful characters in the annals of rock and roll, unquote, as well as a, quote, shadowy cult figure well outside the margins of the mainstream. Yes, he was quite a Crowleyite kind of sex creator. Yeah, there's a couple of YouTubes. You see him talking. He's older. He looks a little corrupt or jaded. And he's hanging out with his young people, who he's probably having fun with. It says, born in Los Angeles, he was the son of character actor Douglas Fowley and actress Shelby Payne. He attended University High School at the same time as singers Jan Barry and Dean Torrance, later of Jan and Dean fame, Nancy Sinatra, Bruce Johnson, later of the Beach Boys, as well as actors Ryan O'Neal, James Brolin, and Sandra Dee. In 1957, so he would have been 18. Yeah, about 18. He was hospitalized with polio, and on his release became manager and publicist for a local band called the Sleepwalkers that included Bruce Johnson of the Beach Boys, drummer Sandy Nelson, and occasionally Phil Spector, who created, that rich sound. He spent some time in the armed forces and, by his own account, worked in the sex industry in Los Angeles in the late 50s, so he was a child hustler, prostitute, or something. In 1959, he began working in the music industry in various capacities for both Alan Freed, the famous DJ, and Berry Gordy, who created Motown. His first record as producer was Charged by the Renegades, a group comprising Johnson, Nelson, Nick Venet, and Richard Podler. He promoted records for the duo Skip and Flip, including the number 11 hit Cherry Pie. During the early 1960s, Fowley was involved as co-producer-publisher with a string of successful records produced in Los Angeles. With Gary S. Paxton, he recorded the novelty song Alley Oop, which reached number 1 on the charts in 1960 and was credited to the non-existent group the Hollywood Argyles. In 1961, he co-produced the instrumental Like Long Hair, arranged by Paxton, which became a number 38 hit for Paul Revere and the Raiders. He wrote Nut Rocker for Bee Bumble and the Stingers, which became a number 1 hit in the United Kingdom in 1962, and he talent scouted Papa Ooh Mau Mau, a number 48 hit for the Rivingtons. The following year, he produced Popsicles and Icicles. I've played that on my show, on the music intro. The following year, he produced Popsicles and Icicles by the Mermaids, which reached number 3 in the charts in 1963, which was written by Pre-Bread, the band Bread, David Gates, then a session musician and songwriter who had met Fowley while Kim was hitchhiking in Los Angeles. During the mid-'60s, Fowley publicized consultant singer P.J. Proby and relocated for a time in London. Fowley wrote the lyrics for the song Portobello Road, the B-side of Cat Stevens' hit single, I Love My Dog. He produced a Them, that's Van Morrison, spin-off band led by 2 ex-Them members, brothers Pat and Jackie McCauley, who were only allowed to use the band name Other Them in the UK, but called themselves Them on the European continent, releasing an album called Them Belfast Gypsies and a single Let's Freak Out under the name Freaks of Nature. So there's Kim bringing the freak scene to Britain. An early incarnation of Slade, known as the In-Betweens, he had something to do with Slade. Soft Machine, he produced Love Makes Sweet Music, their first single, and the Lancasters. Remember Zappa lived in Lancaster for a while. An instrumental rock group featuring a young Richie Blackmore. He went on to Deep Purple. He worked with an up-and-coming band, the Farinas, and renamed them Family. So this guy did a lot. Fowley worked on occasion as a recording artist in the 1960s, issuing albums such as Love is Alive and Well. In 1965, he wrote and produced a song about the psychedelic experience called The Trip. He later appeared on Hyperphone on Frank Zappa's first album, Freakout. Other singles by Fowley as a recording artist included Animal Man from his popular 1968 album Outrageous. All his efforts as a solo artist since 1970 have become cult items, both in reissue and bootleg formats. In 1968, Fowley joined forces with a young band from Topanga Canyon, Southern California area, St. John Green, to produce their only album containing songs, music, soundtracks, comedy, and dark poetry. And it lists the members of the band. The album was engineered by Michael Lloyd. Fowley later claimed it to be one of the great lost records. Somebody will reissue it someday, and people will start crying and jacking off and smoking dope to it. It's a great record. There's only a handful of records that I've made that are great." Unquote. The album was released by MGM on the Flick Disc label, but the group disbanded soon afterwards. In 1968, Fowley produced the album "I'm Back and I'm Proud" for Gene Vincent. I think he was a, what do you call those guys, rockabilly in the 50s. He co-wrote for Warren Zevon's first solo album, "Wanted Dead or Alive." Fowley collaborated with his friend Skip Batton during Batton's membership as a bassist with the Byrds on a number of songs. Several appeared on the group's 1970 album Untitled, and one from the 1971 LP Bird Maniacs called Farther Along was released as a single called America's Great National Pastime. So he goes on. So this guy has been involved a lot on the fringe of the rock and roll world. Gene Vincent pioneered rockabilly. He died in 1971, and that's about the time. No, Fowley was involved with him in 1969. Look at this. In 1973, Fowley produced 3 recordings by Flash Catlick and the Continental Kids for the film American Graffiti. You know, that famous movie by the guy who made Star Wars, George Lucas. These songs were At the Hop, Louie Louie, and She's So Fine. He co-wrote songs for Kiss, Helen Reddy, Alice Cooper, Leon Russell, and Chris Christopherson. He made recordings with Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, which were eventually released in 1981 as the original Modern Lovers album. Fowley's tracks were not included on the original versions of the album The Modern Lovers, but some were included on later CD issues. In 1974, Fowley placed in... What?
I just realized something, but please do continue.
Yeah. Now, I'll end with this. In 1974, Fowley placed an advertisement in a local fanzine, Who Put the Bomb? I used to read that, looking for female performers. He hoped to form an all-girl group that could produce and would perform his songs, but no one responded to the advertisement. In 1975, he met the teenage guitarist Joan Jett. You people should have heard of her, who expressed interest in forming an all-girl band. Less than 2 weeks later, he met a 15-year-old drummer, Sandy West, who introduced herself outside of the Rainbow Bar and Grill in Hollywood, California. West told Fowley of her aspirations to form an all-girl band after playing in all-male groups. This meeting led to Fowley giving West Joan Jett's phone number. The two met and began playing together at West's home, that would be Sandy West's home, the following week. Short time later, Fowley recruited Lita Ford, Sherry Curry, and Jackie Fox. They eventually became the Runaways. While he did produce some of their albums and contributed lyrics to songs, the band was primarily responsible for creating their own music. The group severed their ties with Fowley in 1977. So on and on it goes. So this guy, all over the place. So he, in October 31st, November 13th issue of, I guess, the LA Free Press, is interviewed. And let's see what he says. I think it might be interesting. Let's see if anybody's here. Fowley just died. Oh, here's Bramley. Sorry, Bramley, you came back in and you were on mute. Anything you want to say before we listen to a guy who did what Frank was doing, but he did it more in the street? And Frank was,
which guy?
Kim Fowley.
Oh, Kim Fowley. He just died, right?
Yes, in January. Do you know about him?
No, I just heard of him from today, from you.
All right. Okay, here we go. The article starts off saying, Kim Fowley is a hustler. He telephoned International Times, that's in England, and bombarded me with ideas. His main idea was that I should interview him and give his big personality a suitable space in the paper. To encourage me to do this, he helped arrange EMI to put an advertisement in. So he has these music industry connections, and so he can influence the pop media. And this must be when he goes to England. This may not be 1966. Oh, it's from the International Times magazine in England. It was sort of like the LA Free Press of England. So Remember, it said he went to London, so in 1968. So this may be from 68. So this journalist says, I decided to be tough about it. If I thought Fowley was a big lie, neither he nor his advertisement would get any space in the paper. Fowley arrived, height approaching 7 feet, handsome face, and showered me with more ideas and more information about himself. We made a long tape in a cold basement room. By the end of it, I had come to this conclusion about Kim Fowley. He is pretending to be a psychedelic freak who is pretending to be a pop singer. So he's pretending to be a psychedelic freak who is pretending to be a pop singer. He is on everybody's scene and nobody's. If he cares about anything, it is himself. Yet with all that, I liked him and decided that whatever the hell it is he is doing, I go along with it. The safest description I could think for him is, quote, a 1960s phenomenon. That's the description I think most fits his aura, which is an unidentified flying object. So he had some kind of charisma, like Frank. Below are some extracts from the tape I made with him. He says, quote, Kim Fowley says, I've been in London for 5 months off and on. Off and on means I went over to Paris to do some television. I did some television in Holland, Germany, Sweden, and I did a song called Underground Lady, which is only available on a French EP called The Trip. Plug, he says. The Trip, of course, is a song that I recorded a year and a half ago in a happening in someone's kitchen in California. It sold 16,000 copies in California and approximately 9 to 10 throughout Western Europe. It is an improvisational happening describing what my friends and their friends were doing at the time. It got on the radio by mistake and it sold very well. Then it got taken off deliberately. Eventually it was issued here on the Island label. It got banned by the pirate stations. One pirate station said that The Trip was the most evil record ever recorded. So then the journalist says, because of its connections with LSD? Fowley says, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I always tell the people who ask me if I've ever taken LSD, I always tell them that LSD is 3 initials that not only stand for your money system, that's the pound, but also stand for lingering sex drive. Have I taken LSD, or has LSD taken me anywhere? Have I taken LSD, or has LSD taken me something anywhere? I came over here because when you make records that aren't played on the radio, Tom, you're in trouble because you have to get it exposed. You have to sell it yourself. Then you are competing with the rock and roll teenage idols at the same time, and that's hard. It got to a point 5 months ago where the record companies refused to take me seriously or the music seriously, and I came in exile to Europe. So Tom says, you don't consider yourself a rock and roll singer? No. I would say that I'm concerned with awareness expansion. See, that's sort of like a parallel to Zappa. You can't say it's in rock and roll. You can use it as a vehicle for any ideas people want to hear. There are people who want to hear things that I might be able to put into some form. It's easier to go dancing with your friends than it is to sit down and read it. I think we might use rock and roll, drum beats to accentuate what's happening. So this is exactly what Zappa is saying. He's going to use rock and roll. The attention span of the average person who buys records is not limited, but it's short. There are so many distractions in the mechanical age. He doesn't know it's a software, organic electricity age. He's got a bit of that uneducated old rearview mirror stuff there. Maybe 40 years ago, you could have had your book. Maybe 40 years ago, you could have had your book. I mean, people read back then. You had your F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now you have Bob Dylan. So Tom says, don't you think that what you're trying is already happening anyway? The Beatles on a recent LP had one track with words taken from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's, quote, say that you'll be with me every day. Say that you'll be with me every day, unquote, which is a song about a trip of one kind or another. Kim says, yes, I think these things are breaking through the barriers of conventionality, especially musically. And they're stimulating a lot of people to ask, what's next? What is good and bad? What's happening? They are more or less conscience probers. Take your chalk farm happening last weekend. I think a lot of the people there were grooving on the anticipation that it would continue to get better. What?
That's beautifully put. I've never heard something like this before. It's mind-boggling.
Right. I don't think people were concerned with the actual happening. They all were kind of trembling, pleasurable. They were all kind of trembling, pleasurable, and saying, quote, "Hey, man, we're really all together here," quote. They were looking for things to unite this feeling, and I think they looked to the music. I think you'll find that the happenings in England here are going to get more ... happening. And I hope that the people who play the music can get into the fact that there is violence afoot in the world. And I don't mean negative violence, a positive violence, which has to get together. When it happens, it's very groovy. In America, we're getting to freakouts with between 7,000 and 12,000 people in Southern California with the Mothers of Invention. So here he is, he's a publicist for Frank. You take them around from happening to happening. You take the people around, or the mothers, yeah, maybe you take the musicians, I'm not sure. In America, we're getting to freakouts with between 7,000 and 12,000 people in Southern California with the Mothers of Invention. You take them around from happening to happening, so I guess it means take the mothers around. So Tom says, "Can you tell me more about the Mothers of Invention?" So he says, the Mothers of Invention are headed by Frank Zappa, who is the Orson Welles of psychedelic freak music. That's a good metaphor. Remember Orson Welles' famous movies, and he did multimedia movies, or he was the multimedia master of his day in the 30s. So, yeah, Frank, and you know, Frank's a movie maker, not just a musician, so that's pretty interesting phrase there. Orson Welles of psychedelic freak music. Their musical roots are pre-Elvis, talking about the Mothers. They were playing Spanish-American Negro summertime cheek-to-cheek music for a while. Now he's talking about the R&B scene and then some of the early 60s blues music that they had to play in clubs. They were playing Spanish-American Negro summertime cheek-to-cheek music for a while and evolved to Louie Louie, Wooly Bully, Midnight Hour, and so on. Then came out to Los Angeles from the hinterlands at the tail end of folk rock protest movement. That would be Dylan and the Byrds. In their negativity of protesting against conventionality, they stumbled on a form of positive expression, freaking out, or called freaking out. The very things that, see, so this is good to read this. This is a bit of the same history around Frank. Someone who's talking about Frank out there. The very things that society said was wrong, they turned around and made right. Frank and the group saw the need to express this feeling musically. They invited me to join their group, which I did for approximately 6 weeks. The highlight of our association was when I guested with them at the Vietnam Artist Peace Tower project on Sunset Strip. This was a tower 5 stories high, all paintings. The artists rented the land themselves and erected this. Sunset Strip is very similar to Soho in London. All the right-wing bulldogs came beating along, and there were several pretty bad scenes there. At one point in this project, the money was getting low, so we decided to have a dance. While we were on stage, a brick was thrown at us. I guess he means a Mother's Invention. While we were on stage, a brick was thrown at us the size of a football. It was during the guitar solo, and it was caught. While the tower was up, all the people from national television came out and asked why the paintings, which had taken months to repair, were rotting away in the elements. And the artist said it was because they were people. No. And the artist said it was because there were people rotting away in Vietnam. So Tom then asked, "How about your latest record?" And Kim says, "My latest record starts out," I guess these are the lyrics, "See the sun shining in the midnight sky, high up in the clouds where the pretty airplanes fly." Then he goes, ... whatever that means. I don't know. I found a melody about 300 years old, and I found another melody that was from Equatorial Africa, and I put it together with the instrumentation of a German marching band and a Negro Baroque band, and I imagined I was 10 years old eating chocolate candy and looking awestruck into the air. And that's what the record's about. And the other side is poetry recitation, reciting poetry. Let's see. Does he have anything else?
He was quite the wizard.
Did you say lizard or wizard?
Wizard. Wizard.
Right. He is pretty bright and a more lone nut version of Zappa. So it has an ad in this paper, in this British paper. Kim Fowley. His album is called Lights. I guess this is what they're talking about. And it has a picture of him sitting in a cross-legged, maybe yoga, but he's got a hat on, so he's not doing yoga, but he's just legs crossed. And it just says, "Controlled freakout?" ? Controlled freakout? So he's a propagandist for the freak scene of Zappa for a year or two. Then he goes on, as we saw, he's involved with all kinds of different bands, helping here and there. So go online, Google Kim Fowley, and look at some of his, where he ended up with 10 million women, part of his sexual conquest.
There was an allegation, it says, that Kim Fowley raped a member of 70s rock band, The Runaways.
Yes, that's
statements.
You can watch a YouTube interview with one of the Runaways talking about that. They did leave him. He did something. It looks. So here's yeah. Go ahead.
Was it true?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I missed that one. Sorry. Okay, I want to just read a couple of little Zappa articles, then we'll go on to probably rewrite. This one is February 10, 67. So we've been doing stuff all of 66. So 3 or 4 months later, Los Angeles Free Press. It says Zappa Freaks Return. Now, Zappa, they were in New York in December 66. So then they come back to L.A., and then they can't get any work, then they go back to New York in April. So it says, it's written by Nat Friedland. The Flower Children didn't scream when Frank Zappa and the Mothers Invention wandered grubbily on stage at the Lindy for their Friday L.A. homecoming. They shushed each other. So I guess they didn't scream, they just told everybody to shut up. They shushed each other. And that is exactly where the whole scene was at. There are lots of ways to cast word nets around what the Mothers are into. But right at the core is the undeniable fact that people who are tuned into the Zappa Freak Brigade want to listen to what they are putting down, not just react viscerally to the noise level. Frizz-pated, evil-goateed, wraith-like, and stockingless. Frizz-pated, I guess that's his hair. Evil-goateed, wraith-like, and stockingless. Frank Zappa is. Now remember, we heard Ike Willis and me talking about the genius of Zappa. So here's this, 50 years ago, Zappa is this weird-looking character, but his brain is pretty advanced. Frizz-pated, evil-goateed, wraith-like, and stockingless, Frank Zappa is, among many more other things than anybody else in the pop explosion, so they recognize that he's multi-talented. He is the Brecht and Weil of rock music. Bertolt Brecht. Much of his melodic approach could be an electronic son of Threepenny Opera. Threepenny Opera is the famous Brecht creation. Electronic son of Threepenny Opera. Marching quarter note melodies, one note per word, the magnificently precise mother drummer accenting each word. Zappa is also the most avant-garde arranger in rock and roll. His Archie's Home number interpolated the incredibly, so he's talking about Archie Shepp, the jazz guy, who he's on the cover of Jazz and Pop, which I just touched on last week. His Archie's Home, in quotes, Archie's Home. His Archie's Home number interpolated the incredibly complex new jazz sound of Archie Shepp's style into a series of nonsense word turns. And there was nothing pushy about the effect. He could have run the same out-of-sight lines into any of his other charts. Like many another hippie frontier communications creator, Zappa hates words and says, see the San Francisco Oracle and Underground Paper, and these fill each other for typographic examples of how the process works. End of bracket. His lyrics generally operate on the level of John Lennon's mod Victorian nonsense poem mini books. So John Lennon put out some punning books. His lyrics generally operate on the level of John Lennon's mod Victorian nonsense poem mini books. Then he quotes Zappa, "Vegetables dream of responding to you." And the writer says, which is okay as far as it goes, but the music deserves more. He says, sure, the mothers run in a little protest and satire to keep up the far out-nick image. Yeah, far out Nick. But it's pretty much kitty boo-hooing. Quote, "Sell us a president, agency man." Another line, "Nazis are running this town. It's gutsier than the run of the top 40, but Dylan, Oakes, or the Fugs, it is not. Why don't you take on some of these cats' groovier art rock, Zappa?" So he addresses that to Zappa. "Why don't you take on some of these cats' groovier art rock, Zappa?" So he doesn't know that Zappa's got a lot bigger plans than protest lyrics. Nobody knew that back. But Zappa really isn't happy till he's gotten the nonsense rhymes out of the way and can move into pure sound for the jazz ragas that his music has evolved into. And then what happens is something like this. Jazz ragas. Now, people talk about him being influenced by this and that, but he was influenced by Ravi Shankar, or he liked or was aware of Ravi Shankar before the Beatles were. So and some people say, Zappa said jazz just smells funny, but he did jazz approximate. And then you had ragas. So it says, and then what happens is something like this. The whole stage is full of banks of amplifiers and 3 sets of drums and kettle drums and keyboards and chime gongs, and the volume is all the way up on everything, but somehow it's clean. Not just a massive noise, because Toscanini dictator Zappa has set the sound adjustment so it works. And the whole thing, and works is capitalized, and the whole thing is pounding away without much noticeable melody, and it's so goddamn complex you don't really understand what is going on exactly, but it doesn't matter. And Zappa takes his soul, stand there like a super cool fiend with the guitar, singing true somethings over the sound mass. Singing true somethings over the sound mass. And the piano organ Celeste man is really laying it out. And the piano organ Celeste man, that would be probably Don Preston, is really laying it out. And then the Warhol blonde horn genius is wailing on soprano sax. And then the Warhol blonde horn genius is wailing on soprano sax. Then tenor, and then Zappa, that would be Bunk Gardner, who has lit a cigarette, is making flute pantomimes, so he grabs the flute quick, switching the acoustic pickup suction microphone, which brings the horn out front where it's supposed to be, and is ultra cop-out for the jazz label horns not to take advantage of this into fast riff while he wets the reed for the amplified bassoon, bleep, blap, blap, and Zappa's dragged the rhythmic guitars over to the bass drum over in the corner by the American flag and is demonstrating the beat he wants, and then pulls over to an unused sector of the drum lineup and starts pounding away to bam, boom, boom, pow, and it goes on and on. It's never going to stop. Where are we? What is this place? Welcome home, mothers. So he goes into a little bit of a flip out in his review. I read that last part again. So he's saying, Zappa takes his soul, standing there like a super cool fiend with the guitar, singing true somethings over the sound mass. Now, he was a very good sound engineer, so he made it reasonably clear, the music jumble, precision jumble. Okay, so he, with the guitar singing true somethings over the sound mass, and the piano organ Celeste man is really laying it out, and then the Warhol blonde horn genius is wailing on soprano sax, then tenor, and then Zappa, who has lit a cigarette, is making flute pantomime, so he grabs the flute quick, switching the acoustic pickup suction microphone, which brings the horn out front where it's supposed to be, and it's ultra cop-out for the jazz label horns not to take, and it's ultra cop-out for the jazz label horns not to take advantage of this into fast riff. So he brings the horn out front into fast riff while he wets the reed for the amplified bassoon. Maybe Zappa did that. I'm not sure who amplified. Maybe the jazz guy. Bleep, blap, blap. And Zappa has dragged the rhythm guitars over to the bass drum, over in the corner by the American flag, and is demonstrating the beat he wants, and then he skulks over to an unused sector of the drum lineup and starts pounding away too. So Zappa starts pounding, bam, boom, boom, pow. Goes on, and it's never going to stop. Where are we? What is this place? Welcome home, Mother. So that's a nice review. Now, the April 7th, 67, so this is just before he goes back to New York, he's interviewed in the LA Free Press, Zappa, and it's called Captain Marfka. I don't know if that's referring to Frank or not. It's outside the little full room, in brackets, recording studio, Capitol Records. Past the glassy reflections of soundproof transparency, wigging happily, in brackets, pots wide open, was the tallest troll in the world, Frank Zappa, leader of the world champion freakout Mothers of Invention. On the second night of 3, he got pinned to the podium, looking as though he'd just swallowed a bottle of shoe polish. I guess this guy, Captain Marfka, Betsy Kahn pinned him. And she said, "Excuse me, Mr. Zappa, I'm Hepzibah Throckmorton from the Free Press." Zappa goes, "Yes?"
Strange.
How is it strange?
It's like the way she just stepped up to him. It was like she was a crisscross of what he was looking for, but a mixture of other things that he wanted to work with.
Maybe. So let's see what happens. So when she introduced herself, he goes, "Yes, just what is it you want?" And then Frank says, "I've got to count here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. All right, now let's have those marimbas on top. Yeah." So it looks like she's interrupting him while he's performing. So then she says, "This orchestra here, orchestra in quotes, you have 18 violins, 2 French horns, 2 trombones, 3 electric guitars, piano, electric cello, 6, I suppose." Or electric cello, yeah, 6, I suppose. The Free Press then says, "Captain Marfka is," I guess he's quoting Captain Marfka, it's written somewhere, and she says, "Is that your own design?" Zappa said, "This is what happened. We're doing the album in Italian. It'll look like authentic classical music. Even the title, Lumpy Gravy. But the backside of the cover is for the kids. We had the T-shirt imported from Coney Island." I think that's the T-shirt that says Pipco on it, and Zappa's position like a dwarf.
Nice.
Then the Free Press, "Oh, I'm sorry, he missed it." Who is he? Maybe Captain Marfka. Zappa, "Yeah, but using both hands is just too far out." I don't know what he's referring to. Free Press, "Why are you recording?" So this can be, this is at a studio. All right, he's making Lumpy Gravy, which was made in early 67. So reading that again, outside the little full room, recording studio at Capitol Records, the photo of Zappa conducting what he called the Abnukiels Emuka Orchestra influenced the Beatles to do Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They saw Zappa conducting, and they said, "Holy shit, that rock and roller, blues guy is doing this orchestra. We had to do that." Or it gave George Martin the idea. So that's the legend, that a picture of Zappa in the studio, in this environment, is what inspired the Beatles. Or somebody involved with the Beatles, maybe their producer, George Martin. So he looks like the tallest troll, which is sort of like a tallest Rumpelstiltskin. And the second night of 3, so he's recording, he got pinned on the podium. Okay, so this is not a concert. Zappa is conducting, recording, so there would be intervals for Frank to be interviewed in between the music. So Zappa's conducting. "All right, now let's have those marimba on top." Yeah. So she says, "This orchestra here, you have 8 violins, 2 French horns, 2 trombones, 3 electric guitars, piano, electric cello, 6, I suppose." And she says, "Captain Marfka, is that your own design?" So we're doing the album in Italian. Now, what does that mean? It looked like authentic classical music, but it's designed to turn the kids onto electronic music, maybe, is what I'm adding. This is what happened.
It was like he was making food, like an Italian dish.
Yeah.
And he was breaking down the recipes.
Okay, it's a food metaphor. This is what happened.
Yeah.
We're doing the album in Italian. It'll look like authentic classical music. Even the title, Lumpy Gravy. There's your food. But the backside of the cover is for the kids. So he has 2 audiences the album was trying to attract. We had the T-shirt imported from Coney Island. And then Betsy Kahn says, I'm sorry he missed it. Zappa says, yeah, but using both hands is just too far out. There's the hand metaphor I was talking to with Ike Willis. Now, I don't know. Maybe this practical he's referring to, talking about the conducting, using two hands. But that's emphasis of hand, like he always does. There's the tactility. So the pre-press says, why are you recording things so drastically out of sequence? I mean, bars 10 and 11 of section 7A, then bar 64 of flash 1. So she's looking at Zappa's charts, figuring out that they seem to be not in order. So he is, well, first of all, I'm a freak for editing, which is what he always said. He was a great editor. And I'm not really too sure how it's going to go together. Most of these parts were finished at 10 o'clock this morning. The copyist came and got them, wrote out 35 separate pieces like that. I'll finish the rest tonight when we're through messing around here. I like to change things around. What is this? I like to change things around. I like to change things around. Oh, wait, this is the... wait, I left parts out. You have 18 violins, 2 French horns, 2 trombones, 3 electric guitars, piano, electric cello, 6 woodwinds. This is the mothers of invention, says the writer. Zappa says, no, I don't think you understand. Excuse me, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, then does more conducting. Or is there more? Oh, I'm screwing up. I didn't notice this is a long interview. Did you just laugh, Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to redo a bit of this. So she goes, this orchestra, in quotes, here, you have 18 violins, blah, blah, blah. 6 woodwinds, not 6, I suppose. That's where I had it wrong. 2 French horns, 2 trombones, 3 electric guitars, piano, electric cello, 6 woodwinds. This is the mother's invention? But it isn't the mother's invention. This is Zappa's first solo project. Zappa says, no, I don't think you understand. Excuse me, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is the Abnukio Imuka Electric Orchestra. We're actually recording a ballet. The Free Press says, 1 bar at a time? Zappa says, well, you see, I don't have it completely finished yet. Most composers would spend 2 or 3 months putting this together, planning continuity, establishing thematic development. But... And then she says, Mr. Zappa, one of the trombone players wants to know when they're going to sing. Zappa says to the orchestra, all right. No, wait a minute. What happened to the bass flute on that section there? Oh, you don't have a part in that section? Here, use my copy. Then he turns to Betsy, the interviewer. I don't really need it. All you have to do here is count off and wave your hand a bit. Oh, okay, so there's a handy. Now, this is tremendous. Never seen this before. I mean, I must have read it 40 years ago when I got it from UCLA Library, Xerox department, from old microfilms. But this is great, hearing this description of the making of Lumpy Gravy. So then he says, just wave your hand a bit. It's very, casual about the conducting of this orchestra. Free Press. I understand that last night someone asked you to use both hands. Zappa, yes, but he was taking pictures for a magazine. Wanted to get a better shot of my T-shirt, I suppose. Free Press. Captain Marfka, is that your own design? He said, this is what happened. We're doing the album in Italian. It'll look like authentic classical music, even the title, Lumpy Gravy. But the back side of the cover is for the kids. We had the T-shirt imported from Coney Island. I'm presenting it like a Zappa recording. We're repeating motifs here. Hope you don't mind. Free Press says, I'm sorry the guy missed it. Sorry he missed it. Yeah, but using both hands is just too far out. So that's Frank commenting on the request that he conduct with 2 hands. Why are you recording things so drastically out of sequence? I mean, bars 10 and 11 of section 7A, then bar 64 of flash 1. So what's interesting, she gets to look at the pictures, the actual manuscripts. Well, first of all, I'm a freak for editing, and I'm not really too sure how it's going to go together. Most of these parts were finished at 10 o'clock this morning. The copyists came and got them, wrote out 35 separate pieces like that. I'll finish the rest tonight when we're through messing around here. I like to change things around while I'm hearing them too. That's a tactile relationship, Carol. He's composing, he's interacting, and changing everything on the fly while recording. I like to change things around while I'm hearing them, too, like he's improvising. The score, so he's bringing jazz improvisation to a classical environment. The score, as a written indication of what it's supposed to sound like, is only an approximation of what it sounds like in my head. So he's not hypnotized by the print extension. So when a guy sees a note, a single vibrato note written for a piccolo, and he knows what I want to hear, he makes his own change to an E-flat clarinet. On the other hand, I wrote one part too high for a piccolo trumpet, but the guy still tried to play it. Free Press says, this isn't the Mothers, and it is Capitol Records. And Zappa was on another label for the Mothers. Isn't this a rather unusual way of going about whatever it is? Whatever it is you're doing? Zappa says, a lot of things about it are weird, even about the music. There doesn't seem to be any precedent for a thing like this, written on a rock and roll beat. At one point, there are 35 different happening in the score, and everything has to be synchronized. I use a lot of erratic time changes. As a matter of fact, during the first session, the piano player refused to play. He thought the music was unnatural and wanted to leave. So here's Zappa making fun as a manipulator of the whole music industry. This supports what we were saying earlier. Wait till Roxy hears this. As a matter of fact, during the first session, the piano player refused to play. He thought the music was, quote, unnatural, unquote, and wanted to leave. And one of the guitar players, I guess he heard something strange about me, pulled his own freak-out number, came in wearing a big cowboy hat and a bandana, carrying a bright, shiny Stradivarius guitar, all ready for a mass production teeny quickie, unquote. Then Frank speaks to the horn section. Could you guys just add an eighth note on the end of that? Thank you. Yeah, that's nifty. So these guys are responding to his, off-the-cuff orders. But he's such a genius. He's on top of it. What?
On the fly.
Yeah. Is that Yuri or Bramley speaking?
Yuri.
Oh, here's some people come in. I'm sorry I blocked that. Who's the anonymous blocked person? I see Sean is there. Speak, anonymous person. Anyways, yeah, he's doing this on the fly. He's got great intellectual command of it all, and he can do it real fast. And he's shocking the old-fashioned orchestra people. Oh, it looks like the anonymous guy is speaking. You trying to say something? Speak. Okay, so this isn't what you'd call... So the Free Press is like totally shocked by all this and questioning it. This isn't what you'd call formula music. This isn't what you'd call formula music, though. Did he say he's doing formula music? I don't know. Zappa says, actually, it takes longer to get the album cover processed than... Actually, it takes longer to get the album cover processed than any of the other stuff. It took me a whole week to write 36 minutes worth. 40 pages of it was specially written, like the violin solo I did last night for Sid, and so special bass work and stuff like that. I did it because I wanted to see what it would feel like to have done something like this. So he's creating a whole environment for himself to react to. So the Betsy Kahn of the Free Press says, some of this seems vaguely familiar. Zappa says, deja vu. They call it deja vu. That's DAY-JAH-VOO. Deja vu. Deja vu. They call it deja vu. So now there are surf music fragments that Zappa edits into it, and maybe that was in there or something she heard. Also, some of it sounds like quotes from Stravinsky when you hear it. So she's probably, that's why it's familiar. So then he goes, deja vu, like you've been here before. You've been in this. Now that's interesting. He's talking about his idea there and he's already happened. Some of this seems vaguely familiar. He goes, deja vu. And she goes, no, I mean some of the music has a familiar sound. So Zappa says, there is a similarity in places to Edgar Varese, mainly the French horn parts. The use of high woodwinds a half step apart. The tremulous percussion effects. And then she says, do you mind if I say that? I guess in the article, Zappa, not at all. I'm not ashamed that I was influenced by Varese, because if you're going to be influenced by somebody, he's a good person to be influenced by. Free Press says, your producer calls you an impressionist cubist composer. Your producer calls you an impressionist cubist that's close composer. Any comment? Zappa says, Shazoot. That's spelled S-H-A-Z-O-O-T. Then she says, thank you, Mr. Zappa. Where's the light show? That's her. Where is the light show? So that's a great article.
Wow.
Actual details. We've never heard much about the recording of anybody on the scene at Lumpy Gravy being recorded. So we appreciate this find by Bob. Bob found it.
So was Frank Zappa...
And in the picture, let me say this before you speak. In the picture for Zappa, it's upside down. They present the picture upside down in the LA Free Press. His photo of his face and hair. Rude people. So what were you saying?
Was Frank Zappa
a genius?
Atheist?
Yes.
No, an atheist?
No. He was he said he was a Catholic kid until he was 18, and then he read some Zen stuff, and that got him out of his Catholicism. So he never went back to being a Catholic, but he even has, I think he has on the cover of Uncle Meet the booklet, he has the mother's invention attacking the Vatican in an old automobile. But he then later said that he was a devout pagan. And then he told his brother, which I mentioned last week, which comes out in the brother's biography of Frank, says, I made a pact with the devil. So he went from being a nice Zappa kid to a Satanist, or not, or something. So is there anything else to...
I think, wasn't Zappa into the occult?
He studied the occult when he was a teenager and read it, according to his brother. You know, he read up on it. But I don't see him being anything. He's much like me, on his own. Now, I think we'll end with this. This looks pretty neat. Who's here with us? Everybody's here? Everybody happy?
Woo!
That was Yuri going, ooh, I think.
Yes.
And Eliza's laughing. Ever cynical Eliza. Laughing away to Arizona. Is that where you're going? Texas.
No, it's Texas.
Texas, yes. Now, Bramley or Yuri? Who's speaking?
Okay, me. Really quick question. What if I want to just take like a 2-hour nap break? Can I still call?
No, you're not allowed.
Eliza, why?
You say still you can. No, listen, Yuri.
Because the
you're
best
saying,
part
can you
is
still
coming
call?
out.
Yeah, but Yuri, you're saying, can you still call? Of course you can call when you wake up, if I'm still here. But yeah, there's no... People do that a lot. Eliza goes and takes breaks, drops over 3 or 4 hours, and calls back in.
Yeah, it's only when there's only one person speaking, so I'm going to fall asleep when it's that one person speaking.
Me. Well, I will make you fall asleep.
Not you.
Eliza's on my time, so what is it, 2 a.m. right now?
No,
so,
it's 4.
It's 4. It's 4 a.m.
Yeah.
No.
4.
Oh, okay. So let's say I
what are you apologizing for? You can always listen to the archives. Or is that beyond your kin?
I like it live, man.
Oh, okay. Well, you're missing out if you don't listen to the archives. Right, Eliza? Doesn't matter whether it's live or not.
Yeah, it's better if it's live, but if you miss it, the next best thing.
Yeah, the archives. You don't want to miss. Anything can happen here, and anything does, and phenomenal information gets exchanged. I mean, look, we're talking about Frank Zappa. Now, as I knew 50 years ago, the greatest composer in history, we're reviewing this important thing. And it is important, as he did become important for those that require social motor importance. All right? So this is, we're not just making up shit here, or we're not talking about something that is not known yet. This is known. Frank is played by orchestras all over the world. Orchestras, besides many cover bands.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got 2 institutions doing his music.
Go Go make yourself some coffee.
Yeah, I can't say the same for Yuri. Yuri's still wondering what the fuck he's going to do. Still getting major insights, breakthroughs like he did tonight. So he's still on a learning curve. Wait, what?
You never stop learning, Bob. You know, I really
stop learning. What did he say, Eliza? First stop learner. What did he say?
He said you never stop learning.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Well, once you're transcended, you stop learning. You start making. Learning is a passive process. Now you start making worlds when you're transcended. Another insight.
Is that why my legs are kind of numb right now?
Yeah, because you're learning too much. You're in the passive consuming phase. Start jumping around and making spaces. Stop listening. Okay, go to bed. You're gonna miss this great article, but we don't care.
No, I'm not gonna miss anything. I'll just leave it on and I'm gonna listen.
Yeah. Okay, you're gonna lie down and fall asleep eventually.
No, well, I don't. Well, I did have a cup of coffee with at 11 o'clock.
Now you can't sleep. Okay,
no, purposefully here.
Yeah, to stay awake. You had the coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to.
Now, this is Hit Parader magazine. As a matter of fact, I'm going to look up Hit Parader. How is that? Is that still going? That was the top teen magazine, for decades. Let's see what Wiki says about it. It stopped in 2008 when Ion showed up. Hit Parader was an American music magazine that operated between 1942 and 2008. A monthly publication, it was a general popular music title until the 1980s when its focus turned to the genres hard rock and heavy metal. I didn't know that. The magazine reached its peak during the 1980s as heavy metal music achieved high levels of popularity and commercial success. Okay, so that's Hit Parader. So this teen magazine in 1967 put out a special edition. It's called 1967 Collector's Edition. 50 cents. Number 6, Winter, Hit Parader, a Charlton publication. Yearbook, Best of the Music Scene in Review. They got the Supremes, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. What's those guys' name? A Lovin' Spoonful, I think. The Beach Boys, Mama Cass. I don't know if that's the Monkees. Okay, and Diana Ross is the Supremes. And underneath it says Beatles, Monkees, Byrds, Moby Grape, Simon and Garfunkel, Spoonful, that's Lovin' Spoonful, Four Seasons, Raiders, Supremes, Rolling Stones, Mamas and Papas, Beach Boys, Jefferson Airplane, and many more. So, in that, they have an article on Zappa, or the Mothers, it says. It has a very unique picture of the Mothers in their best freak. One of the earliest pictures of the Mothers with funny clothes on. So it says, the most exciting, outrageous, and ambitious rock and roll group anywhere in the universe is the Mothers. Their music, best appreciated in person, combines today's pop sounds with symphonic music, satire, the primitive rock and roll songs of the 1950s, and social commentary. And you can even dance to it. The Mothers were organized by Frank Zappa, an ex-advertising man who'd been writing songs since he was 14 and experimented with abstract music. Using motivational research principles, Frank created a group unlike anything the world had ever seen. For one thing, they weren't seeking a hit record. Hit in quotes. And it says, turn the page. So now they start quoting Frank. It says, the Mothers, and then a subtitle, the Mothers want to kill Top 40 radio. Quoting Frank, our aim is to kill Top 40 radio, explains Frank. Certain concessions must be ready before a record is playable on the air. I am not in the business to compete with the makers of Hanky Panky. Hey, I think I read this. That record can be played because it won't hurt anybody. It won't move them either. I'm not writing music like that. I'm a composer, and nobody wanted to hear my music, so I organized the Mothers and the Freak Out album. Now people are listening. Sometimes they wonder what they're hearing and why it sounds like that, but sometimes they like it. Top 40 radio is unethical, unmusical, and it stinks. Classical music stations aren't much better. They all have very rigid, limited programming. Well, I think I read this the other day. Does this sound familiar to you, Eliza?
Vaguely.
I'm going to read it anyways, just for whatever.
Yeah, read it again.
Yeah, the mothers were created to fill most of the gap that exists between so-called serious music and the mass public. Really good music with advanced tendencies has been kept from the public at large. This includes classical popular music. The filtering system, a little old lady selects the music played by symphony orchestras and on radio stations. I remember reading this. Once some people get to the position where they own a nightclub or control the goings-on in a concert hall, they become critics and tastemakers. Usually they hate music. They love business and just want to make money. Whenever I have to deal with this kind of people, I always tell them that I hate music and I'm only doing this for the money. They slap me on the back and we get along fine. I tell them I wish I could drive a cab instead, but I can't get a license. The public knows nothing of what's really going on in the outer limits of music. There are kids writing music who think they've just made up the most fantastic thing. They don't know that the best they can write today was already written and performed in 1912. A piece like Amérique by Edgar Varese, written in 1912, would scare the average teenager to death. Really scare him. Varese lived and died in New York. The average American doesn't even know he existed, yet what he wrote has virtually changed the shape of all the music of the other composers who have heard it. Now they write, this may be different. One of the composers it affected was Frank Zappa. After convincing some rhythm and blues musicians he knew to become the Mothers and embark on a new musical venture, Frank and his friends starved for 10 months. But gradually people came to see the weird new group that insulted the audience and did songs no one had ever heard before. Then it goes into the Tom Wilson thing. The Mothers now number 7. They are Frank Zappa, head mother, plays lead guitar, piano, vibes, drums, composes words and music, and writes the arrangement. He likes the music of Varese, Kegel, Stravinsky, Boulez, and Stockhausen. Any recent contemporary serious music of experimental tendencies. Zappa is from Baltimore. His favorite food is shrimp creole and chicken curry and/or peanut butter. Favorite color, Naples yellow. Real name, Francis Vincent Zappa. We found out later it's not Francis Vincent Zappa. Frank Vincent Zappa. Roy Estrada plays bass and guitar on. Sings high falsetto harmony. He checked in at I guess that means he was born. He checked in at Santa Ana, California. He likes jazz, blues, Manny, Mo, and Jack. Hobby, building up his hot cars and cruising the burger stand to show off his carburetors. Building up his hot cars and cruising the burger stand to show off his carburetors. Now, he, today, I think, rumored, in jail for molesting, young kids. So Roy apparently got caught or had these tendencies and suffering for that now. Billy Mundy plays drums, timpani, gongs, castanets, tambourine. So this is what's new about this article. It gives the hit parader type of thing. They tell you what your favorite color is. So this is new. Partial to pickles and chocolate-covered raisins. He likes the Byrds, Wagner, Stravinsky, and Bach. Favorite colors, black and blue. Born in San Francisco, lives in West Hollywood. Bunk Gardner plays any and all woodwinds. Lists hobbies as dancing, fishing, and saving peach pits. Prefers classical music, Respighi, Dohnanyi, Mendelssohn, Smetana, Dvorak, P.F. Sloan, but digs Archie Shepp and Herman and the Hermits. Unfavorable color is khaki. Unfavored color is khaki. Jimmy Carl Black from El Paso, Texas, plays drums, timpani, tambourine, trumpet. Favorite colors are icebox white and lavender blue, dilly dilly. Favorite group, the Beatles. Favorite music, anything written by Frank Zappa. Turned on by Mexican food and beer. Ray Collins plays harmonica and tambourine, sings lead vocals. Won't eat meat as he dislikes killing of animals. Digs the blues and the Beatles. Hobby is painting. Favorite color, nuclear magenta. Don Preston plays piano, harpsichord, organ, string bass, gongs, chimes, other instruments he builds himself. He's from Flint, Michigan. Eats macrobiotic foods, carrots, and coconuts. Thinks Miles Davis is a groove. In the contemporary music bag, which is smaller than a suitcase, he cites Varese, John Cage, and Morton Feldman. Most rock and roll albums cost around $5,000 to record. Free Coat cost $21,000. It was released as a 2-record set, selling for the price of one. The word spread through the underground, and the album turned up on the bestseller charts. Not many groups can have a hit album without getting a hit single first. Frank put his knowledge of motivational research into the album cover. He says, Frank says the Freakout album was distilled and packaged very purposefully to sell on site. And then Frank asked the question, like, when in the history of teenage music has an unknown group come out with a 2-record package that looked like that? Asked Frank. He says the packaging was designed to say, big letters, hey, look at this freaky piece of trash. 2 records for only $3.12. And he says, the Susie Cream Cheese line was a carefully planned hype. It has little or no meaning on any level. People can make it as bland or as nasty as they like. Girls come up to us and say, I'm Susie Cream Cheese. And I say, I know you are, but really it doesn't mean anything. The success of Freakout enabled Frank to carry out the next step in his carefully plotted musical master plan. Our second album, called Absolutely Free, is not exactly rock and roll. It's an oratorio. I don't think this was in a previous article. Each member of the group sings a character part. There are about 8 songs edited together in a continuous piece of music presenting a panorama of life in America today. There's a section about 10 minutes long about a man in a city hall who has a fetish about 13-year-old girls covered with chocolate syrup. The result of this is that he makes bad laws. There's also a song about vegetables. People don't talk to vegetables enough, Frank says. The packaging is more tasteful, I guess he means, than Freakout. It's closer to what the music is really like. The cover resembles a movie soundtrack album, sort of. The cover resembles a movie soundtrack album, sort of. So the journalist says, what can the mothers do for an encore? Zappa told us he wants to stage a Broadway musical science fiction horror story based on the Lenny Bruce trials. A Broadway musical science fiction horror story based on the Lenny Bruce trials. He'd also like to conduct an 84-piece rock and roll orchestra on the stage of Carnegie Hall and hypnotize the audience with his music. If anyone can do all these things, it's the mothers. A fun article, even though some of it's repeated. What do you think of that, whoever's here?
Who's here?
You got Eliza, yourself, and maybe Yuri, plus Sean in England, and Anonymous. I could ask Bill how many people are on the computer. Let's look that. I wonder if Bill's awake. We'll go stats. Question mark. Send it to Bill, and then hit the panic button to get his attention. And we'll see. That's what I have to do. I have to wake him up or whatever. So, on the, there's been some typing going on. Bramley's been typing. You people have been communicating. Youngblood says, yeah, hell yeah. What? So Mateo asked, Bob, how did you meet Ike Willis? I met him in 1988 when they did 3 days, I think, in New York City at the beginning of their tour, Zappa's final tour, awesome band. When we listened to Stairway to Heaven by Zappa, that was recorded on that tour. So I went backstage. I had a backstage pass because I'm a friend of Frank's. And I was talking to Psychotic Joey, who in the Baby Snakes footage is almost crushed. And Frank mentions him. And Ike overheard us talking about UFOs or something, and he came over and he joined in. And he liked talking about that kind of stuff. So we sort of became friends a little bit there. And then in 1988, and then I didn't see him until about 1995, he came to New York, a Zappa cover band called Band, B-A-N-N-E-D, from Utopia. And I went backstage and reminded him of myself, and we hit it off again. He introduced me to the other guys. We talked for a while, and then that's 1995, and it took another 13 years. No, about 2005, maybe 10 years later, he came to New York and played in his Project Object Zappa cover band, and I spoke to him there outside the club before the concert, but I didn't remind him. I don't think I reminded him that we had met in 95, 13 years before, or 10 years before. Just talked to him. Then he talked to some other people, and I went into the club and watched him perform. And I think I saw him there in 2000. Bob Marshall came with me 2002 or 3. We saw Ike Willis at the Hard Rock Cafe in Times Square. I don't know if I talked to Ike at that point. Then I talked to him only because I bumped into him a couple of years later. He was sitting outside the Kitchen, I think, downtown Soho area. I think it's called the Kitchen, not the Kitchen Factory, something called the Kitchen, I think. But I didn't remind him much of our past, or if I did, it wasn't of much significance. But then...
Kitchen.
No, not that place. That's over on the upper Midwest side. This is down below Soho. And so then that's not 2005. So 6 years later, in 2011, I go to East Germany and go to the Zappa Nally, 3-day Zappa festival. And I don't know, a couple of days into it, I'm in the little dining room cafeteria where I eat. And I sit down beside someone, and then a bunch of other people sit down, and then all of a sudden I see Ike Willis is sort of 4 people away from me, sitting there talking to somebody. So I started talking about something, and it got Ike's attention. And then I said something, I think, about how Frank was murdered, and he goes, yeah. No one had ever agreed with that, and I ever heard, especially a friend of Frank's or a band member. So we talked, in front of 4 people, back and forth, and had an exciting conversation. So that's when he gave me his phone number. Oh yeah, and then that's first week of 2011, and then I go back to London, and I see him playing in London a few weeks later. It might even been a month later, and Sky Goddess Sue was with me. And we go see Ike, and then we talk to Ike. I introduced Sue to him after their performance in this small club. And that's when we realized we need to do some more talking in depth. So then around Christmas 2011, I recorded our AIDS story, our AIDS expose of why Frank was murdered. And for that point on, he called me Uncle Bob. So we were on the phone a lot through 2012, and then in July 2013, we recorded what we night about the Dio Fa, God Lies. So far, that's my life. And occasionally, since then, I talk to Ike, and we're planning different things, and he's trying to survive doing his tours. I think he's in a couple of cover bands. So that's... Oh, and then Mateo says, what led you... Well, you hear us talk. We got so inspired by Dio Fa, and it never got done, so we have to do it. But I don't think we have the set up right now to do it. It's interesting that since Gail's passed, it always would have been a problem, I think, with Gail there. But Gail might have wanted to do it, but I'm going to approach probably the Zappa kids to see what they think of the project, how it could be done, and it's probably a better opportunity to do it now. Now that we don't have Gail sort of controlling the scene. So L-Truth says, I need Cliff Notes. What's going on? Where are we at? I think so busy spinning gold from that cotton wheel. Are you in London, Robert? Robert is, but not me. And then he goes, sounds like this is Zappa Hour. Yes, it is. Robert says, ahoy, this has been Frankie's year. Bramley says, what about the technological singularity? E-Truth, somewhere between lost and found. E-Truth says, yeah, feeling more found now. He goes, what's up, Bramley? Mateo gives a link to the article I'm reading, which, this article, a lot of these are, not the more obscure stuff I'm reading, but some of them are in the good Zappa archives. Bramley, I have a question on psychedelics and immortality. Why are you typing this, Bramley? Did I have you on mute? Can you just speak up?
Well, I thought you guys were reading the chat, but...
All right, so that was just You're just planning it, putting it out there for later. All right. Ask the cops to spell pinguiculum, says ORA. Ever done LSD, Bob? I would never know ORA, but I did have some experience. I did get drugged at various times and had pretty good experiences. At one time, everything turned to gold, and I became a golden king, spinning gold, which became true. And that was 40 years ago. Mateo says LSD became illegal on the day before this was published. I guess about whatever, October 7th, and LSD got illegal on October 8th, 66. And then N says, want to buy some Mandy's, Bob? He's quoting Zappa about 1977, where Frank, forget the name of the song, is addressing Bob Dylan. Says, want to buy some Mandy's, Bob? In a Dylan kind of voice, I think. Or Adrian Ballou does a pretty good imitation of Dylan after this question is said by Frank. Or RA says Californication. And he says, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Rob says, wow, I just had my first dream in years. I was in an Ohio hotel with various Facebook friends. Couldn't find a toilet, though. Now, that's Rob versus Robert. Maybe there's a difference. RRA says, hideout is gross misrepresentation of Uncle's viewpoint. Not sure what he's referring to. Uncle with a K? No, it's not. It doesn't have a K.
Okay.
What about culture that took drugs before the electrical environment? Oh, yeah, there was more drug taking in the 19th century, some people say, than in the 20th century, but it was legal. And everybody took drugs all through history. But when you have nice little teenagers taking drugs, I think that's a bit different. Coming out of an environment that was not pre-industrial tactile. Pre-industrial tactile cultures, there's lots of drugs going about. Even St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, all the saints took drugs. So they could investigate Scripture in more depth, get new interpretations.
Oh, man.
Bramley says, I got knocked off the line. Mateo gives the Kim Fowley article on Wikipedia, or no, just the article on Kim that I'm reading. HN goes, Shazoot, quoting Frank Zappa. Then ORA says, thanks, says, ever ask Ian about UFOs? Yes, we have a lot on UFOs, ORA. And Mateo says, thanks for the backstory, Bob. That's about Ike Willis. Has Ike not been exposed to Iandom or the drops? I sent Ike the drops. He liked it, but I don't think he could afford to keep taking it. He was having a hard time on the road, not getting many gigs a year or two ago. He tried the drops. He liked it, but I don't think he followed up on it. He has not been exposed to ion. I have not talked about that. Well, I've mentioned a couple times I was on the phone with him years ago, 2011, say, when Ion would be on KPFK in L.A., and Ike lives in L.A. area. He could have turned on KPFK and listened, but I don't think he did. But I gave him the opportunity in 2011. So that's the last point. Now, where are we?
Wait, one more question. What kind of tours does Ike still do? If he doesn't involve Dweezil, does he? No, Dweezil took a lot of his business away when Gail Zappa State started promoting Dweezil. Dweezil was running around doing many concerts. His band may be better than Ike's band, but there was some controversy between Andre in Ike's band, who was attacked by the roadie of Dweezil at some concert they were both at, where Andre was there, and that was pretty bad. So there's no good feeling, I think, between Andre and Ike and the Dweezil guys. But the Dweezil guys were getting all the gigs, and they were a pretty flashy show. And
So what's your, so you just look up Project Object. I think it's Project/Object. That's his band, and you can read their sites and reviews and video of them on tour. Put in Ike Willis and ProjectObject.com and it should come up. Now, Gene's here. Gene doesn't come in much.
Morning,
but,
Bob.
Yes, morning for you. What's up with you, buddy?
My schedule's changed a lot recently. I'm sleeping a lot again. I'm doing the Candida diet.
Is that something Carolyn recommends?
Yes, it is something she actually suggested a couple years ago when I first started consulting with her. But she's such a wonderful human being. She encouraged me to be patient and not to do it right away because it's a big deal. You can't eat anything. And
so you're doing that, and that makes you sleep a lot.
Yes, my body's kind of bipolar. My physical body is bipolar, very up and down. I'll have bursts of energy, and then I'll become exhausted very quickly. And then
on the diet or before that?
On the diet.
Yeah.
I've had issues with energy, ever since I found you guys, or before. That's the reason why the drops and everything have made such a difference. And on this diet and taking all the stuff, which is really, really helping, but I now get why she talks about it so much, because it is a challenge and it does affect your energy level.
Well, how's that? She talks about it. That doesn't explain talking about it so much.
On the health call, she's spent quite a bit of time.
Well, she advocates it.
Yes.
And she talks in the health call about the problems of doing it.
Just this summer, it's come up a lot, and I don't know. I don't know if it's because there's a lot of people, calling in, or that's a trend they're seeing in.
Well, she has talked about it. She does talk about it, but you're implying that she's talked a lot about the problems that you're experiencing, the inconveniences or whatever. I don't recall her talking too much about the effects of it. You're saying she tells you to be careful about it.
There was a blog about emotional, I can't remember the title, something about Candida and emotional issues. Maybe because I'm focused on it, I heard more than you did in the calls. But
looking at
it. It's also daylight savings time, and that really changes, or has an effect on my body, where I'm ready to go to sleep at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, while Zappa was in New York City. Listen, while Zappa was in New York in the summer of '67, he formed an advertising company, and an ad he made for Hagstrom guitars. It shows Frank standing there quite aggressively looking at us and holding a guitar with the arm of the guitar coming towards you. And then the other mothers are all in a group behind him on the floor. But this thing that's stretching you, the neck of the guitar, it has these big words beside it: long and slippery. Long and slippery sounds penal.
That's a great way to wake up.
In bed. What?
That's a great way to wake up.
And then it says the mothers
like
have mentioned underneath.
To me.
Intestines?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the yeast thing. So did you want to bring something up, Gene?
Well, now, did I hear that you played the recording with Ike Willis where you described to him? Yes,
Yeah, is that probably on Bobfest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you know
that's going to be a lot of fun to hear again. I remember it from Bobfest.
Yeah, it's really good.
So I'm not going to ask you if that might be one of the projects on the back burner that you and I have been talking about.
You're not going to ask me about what he hoped to do. No, don't ask me about it. I don't talk about it.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so I'm just looking through my notes. I think we're finished with Frank. Geez, the last show was 12 hours. That's a bit much for people, right?
What happened in the beginning of the show? You played music for a couple hours?
Music for 2.5 hours. Then we talked for half an hour, and then we did Ike Willis, and then now we've been doing Frank Zappa, the Frank Zappa hour.
So I got the end of the Ike Willis recording. Was there just one recording that you played?
Yeah, that's all so far. Also, a neat statement by Frank in the late 80s about predicting freedom coming in the 90s due to technological overkill and the establishment not able to hold it, keep people afraid. So that's why the establishment brought in 911 to try to recover control on the fear level. So it's interesting, Frank was predicting the cause that caused the 911 on one level. One of the factors.
I listened to a cash flow. I think Paige White posted on Dupes, referred to a cash flow that Debbie was on, Deb from Boston.
Yes, I was going to play that, or I haven't listened to it, but I made a note of that. Maybe we could put it on later or something, see what it's like.
Well, in that cash flow, Bob, you reference a show from July of the same year, 2010. And I listened to that. I believe it was July 2nd of 2010. And you provide a fabulous summary. It might have been one of the first shows that you were on where James asked for an introduction of you, and you summarized a lot of things very well. Kind of your whole time.
Okay, what's the date of this?
July 2nd, 2010.
Okay, well, we've been doing the show on cash flow for 6 months or 8 months. So what did I do? What did James ask me belatedly?
It was like he was introducing you. You know, he said, "Tell us about yourself." And you launched.
Oh, so what did I talk about?
You launched into the whole thing. Your background, when Echelon, when you became, I think it was
Chairman, Senior Council 10.
Yep. And then you went into the McLuhan's effects of media, and that the intelligence agencies were aware of this, and that really just describing everything that's been going on, the shadow banking system.
Right.
Yeah, it was a good summary.
Okay, and you found that while looking for Boston, Debbie Boston.
Yes, I was listening to, I think that was October 20th?
October 27th.
Of the same year.
Right.
Yep. And there she was. That darn.
Wow,
so
she's
what do you
been
make of
listening
that?
for a while then.
Yeah,
in
she's always
fact,
pretending
Ion
she
was
doesn't
on.
know.
She had a conversation with Ion in 2010.
That's so funny. Because for a while she was coming back as different identities each time, different names.
Yeah, like this. What's going on? Is she nuts? Can't remember her stuff, or she's pretending to be stupid? You know, that's the question about her.
She thinks she's.
I mean, here she was asking just 3 months ago, what is Ion? What does Ion do, or something? You know, here she is talking to Ion 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. We'll be waiting with full awareness of everything. I'm putting away my papers.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
What were you, remember that conference
you want to ask about psychedelics and immortality? That was the question on the board, right?
Yes. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the psychedelics do something to the sensory perception, shake it up, cause confused signals, or maybe they create bliss, all kinds of different subjective responses. There's no such thing as eternity, you could say. It is a fact of existence and not to be noted, not to be wondered about. Unless you go, well, it's weird being live. How come this is happening? Why am I here forever? So, I don't know what to say about. Some people think psychedelics makes people aware of their eternal self or their sense of being eternal. So, if that's good, then more power to the drugs.
What
I guess I don't have much to say.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware.
Well, what do you think of it? Let's figure out what you say about it. What do you think of psychedelics and immortality?
Well, I think there's a lot of studies to be done. More research.
Well, how do you do that? I mean, you're already eternal. How do you study it? How do you study eternity?
Well, we're talking about immortality.
Oh, okay. Immortality means surviving death and living forever in the physical. Okay, I'm actually misinterpreted that, right? I'm talking eternity, but you mean staying in the body. I think I would say that they might inspire you to think that you could be eternal in the body, but they would not help you become eternal. You need to change your blood and your cells, which is what our products do. Ian says mostly the psychedelics just sort of shake up your mind, make your mind temporarily relaxed, allowing other experiences to flow in, because the blocking mechanism of your normal consciousness becomes sidelined for a little while. So it loosens up your control factor so that you would allow the anomalous to happen more easily. Now, I got something here, Eliza. I'm not going to do it tonight, but are you there, Eliza?
I'm here.
We've got upcoming gifts in the Zappa world. I have the movie screenplay of Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People. Original story and screenplay by Frank Zappa, copyright 1964. This is when he was at the Cucamonga studio and trying to make movies or thinking about it. Property of Frank Zappa Enterprises, 314 West G Street, Ontario, California. That's when he was married. He was still married in 64. But it gives his phone number and everything. So this is his manuscript. And it says the characters are Captain Beefheart. Listen to this.
A few days ago, I watched a documentary on Captain Beefheart.
Good. Did you see that footage of him in 1966 at a surfer beach? You know, it's like a mainstream teenage music show, and he's singing Boom Boom or something?
He's at the beach, yeah.
Yeah, on the beach, and he looks so handsome. He could have been a big star.
He does, doesn't he? He was also a good-looking one when he was young.
Yeah.
Back in his heyday.
Yeah, he really looks good, and if he wasn't so eccentric and, well, he wouldn't want to be, but if he was packaged and processed, he could have been a teen heartthrob.
Yep, I totally agree.
Right. So the characters, it says Captain Beefheart. a sort of narrator who is magic. Now, Beefheart later forms a band called Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band. So then it has Sue, which is actually his mother's name. It says his mother. Then Glenn, his actual father, Glenn, his father who was a bread man. And it says Billy Sweeney. I don't know if that's a real person. An old janitor. Cecil Sweeney, his nephew. Larry Fanoga. It says he still likes ponies. Johnny Smith, a corn-fed astronaut. Senator Gurney, he works for the government. Celestia, a queen from the moon with green skin. And then the king of grunts. That is what his followers call him, the king of grunts. And the play is called Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People. Also, there's a newscaster, first grunt, second grunt, 9 other grunts, 9 other green girls, a baton twirler, 2 missile technicians, and a 7-piece youth band, supported by a large crowd. Now, it says in the first pages, a Happy Valley sign and surrounding landscape. That's what Zappa had on his studio in 1970. Dr. Zircon. And Happy Valley scene or lab or something. So we have that manuscript, and then we have another. Oh, this is what is this? Another version of the manuscript, maybe different version. Then we have 1972 Munchkin Music, ASCAP, all rights reserved, and this opera or play or movie is called Hunchin' Toot, Hunchentoot. There's book and lyrics for Hunchin' Toot by Frank Zappa. So, might be interesting to read through those for their obscurity. Have to see if they're online someplace. Maybe they are known. Someone has done something with them. So I think I looked up something, Captain Beefheart the group, and Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People, and it wasn't around. But I thought, well, it's copywritten. I think Gail would have made sure it wasn't available. It's Frank's property. So, what do you have at? Isn't that exciting? These artifacts.
Yep.
We're looking for conceptual continuity. Okay, so
conceptual continuity.
Yes. Now, Gene, before I take a break and play some Zappa music, would you like to say something, or is it Bramley still got more questions?
Oh yeah. So Raymond Kurzweil commented on Marshall McLuhan in his book called The Age of Spiritual Machines.
Yes, that came out a long time ago. I didn't know that. What's he say?
Well, he just mentioned him in his book. He just said Marshall McLuhan, like media ecologist. But do you have a comment on that?
No. I don't know what he said. Got to know what he said.
Well, he was basically extrapolating on what Marshall McLuhan said on technology.
Yeah, but McLuhan said many things from many different angles. You'd have to see what aspect. If he's quoting on McLuhan,
the medium is a message.
The most general definition of McLuhan's stuff is media are extensions of our bodies. So if he's commenting on that, that would support his idea that machines can come. He could use that quote or that idea to support his idea that machines will become spiritual. But it would be probably sounds like just a very general statement. And I don't know if McLuhan would agree with that. He does say television is the highest decibels of consciousness, but people weren't aware of the changes and didn't have the vocabulary to figure it out, and so they actually led into an apocalypse. That's what McLuhan said would happen, an apocalyptic time we'd be in, because people didn't recognize what TV was. So TV is a spiritual machine, as McLuhan defined it.
But what I think he was trying to say was that humans will evolve with machines spiritually.
Well, that's McLuhan didn't agree with evolution. He wasn't a Darwin. Didn't believe in Darwin. He said evolution was done by technology. So, on a general level, if that's what Kurzweil's saying, McLuhan's saying the same thing. But McLuhan said shouldn't evolve by default. We should understand what the effects are so that we don't get sidetracked in misinterpretations of what's going on.
Wow.
So machines being spiritual, that's something that McLuhan would argue with, probably. Want clarification of what that means.
I agree. I mean, that's why I'm asking for your opinion, because it's such a obscure topic.
Well, not so much in science fiction and in The Matrix, different movies, they talk about spiritual machines. So all through the pop culture the last few years since Ion showed up, we could say that Ion is a spiritual machine, a talking hologram. But Ion wouldn't be limited to that. But it would include it.
Bob,
we're waiting for Ray to...
You said in July 2010, spiritualists didn't get that there's a new kind of spiritual experience happening through the media.
Right. They didn't know that.
And that new kind of spiritual experience has, well, been created. Ion has been created as the newest spiritual experience.
Yes.
Through the media.
Well, media is anything humans make. All social order is media. See, so that's how we define it with McLuhan. So are you saying something, you're probably saying more recent technologies?
No, right. You've broadened the definition.
McLuhan did. Anything that was made humans, from speech to bulldozers, is a medium. But actually the effects of the technology, the telephone, the bulldozer are objects, figures, but the ground is their effect on previous technologies and their backgrounds and grounds. Or language affecting language is a simple meaning. So that's where the word medium refers to the previous society that the new technology has invaded. So you can't see the new technology, so you look at the old media and you notice they're changing, and you figure out what's common and what their changes are, what can be figured out from the changes in the past.
Perfect. That's what, I'm trying to, I'm having fun anticipating the effects on our definition of wealth, or anticipating the new wealth, which is already happening. Yeah. That the new technology is already affecting the definition of wealth without us even seeing it. And in July, I took some notes from this July 2nd.
Hey, you know what, Gene? They see it in terms of they see it affecting themselves and past media, and that's all they see. They see that something's afoot.
Yes, this is a great example, Bob, because you always say that information is relatively cheap. Now, from my experience in my age group, I've seen it cost more and more money. But I'm going back to the 60s when the telephone was free and the TV was free. Absolutely, my parents probably paid a pittance for the phone service, and TV was completely free. You bought the TV and plugged it in. And it does require going back, because in this July 2nd cash flow, you summarized that. you talked about the effects of the radio environment first, that information was for free. So the elite knew, the elite saw everybody getting what only in the past the privilege received, that kind of luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did have a better perspective of the whole thing when I looked at it from, well, again, your past experience, reaching back in the beginning of the electric age, the electric environment, and all the focus. You focus on the writers of that period because they were trying to analyze another very huge technological change that only the elite were looking at in that way of, this is going to change our lives. You know, it went from agrarian to industrial, right? As a result of as a result of electricity. So not only trying to figure out how electricity was going to change their lives, it was that brought on the industrial age. I'm babbling now, but
yes,
you do have, going back to the turn of the century and observing the effects from then forward gives me a better perspective of saying, you know, look, it is relatively free. Telecommunications now is relatively free, even though we're paying more for it than we might have been 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
And look at what we're getting for it. It is. It dominates our daily activities.
They added about 10 more steps.
You said that you said that the information was for free, and that any kind of entertainment is a learning experience. Any kind. It wasn't just, you know, now we're focused on something being educational. And you said it's all processed by the brain rather than looking at your garden. So your brain's processing all this information. Back then, their choice was to go walk in the garden, or, you know, that's what they knew. That's how they entertained themselves. So the radio was a really big deal.
Yes.
And all that is without coffee, Bob. That's pretty good for me.
Are you practicing explaining the 20th century?
No, it's just, again, like I said, I'm having fun realizing that the new wealth is already here. And finding words for that, but it was very useful to trip across that July 2nd recording. It puts everything in perspective. That's why I'm not going to gush too much about you this morning, but that's what makes up your perspective and experience, is that you've got 100 years of history. You've experienced these changes over the last 100 years.
Yeah. So were you a socialist or Marxist in college when you studied economics or whatever it was you studied?
I thought it made more sense than capitalism.
Say it again. You did what?
I thought it made more sense than capitalism. The little bit that I was able to get my hands on. Like I said, I've learned in the last year that there's so much more that I didn't know was even available while I was majoring in economics in an American college. But I didn't.
So what did you mainly learn in economics?
I did not specialize. I focused on macroeconomics and basically economic theory. What I recall is more, I was interested in the different economic theories and I wanted to develop my own economic theory, Bob, because the little bit that I knew that I learned of everybody else's didn't cut it. And that's what's interesting now is, now with the information that I've learned over the last couple of years, it all makes much more sense. There really wasn't an intention to make things better necessarily.
Did you say
there were goals, but they weren't the goals that we all think the leaders of the world had in mind necessarily.
Well, did we think that the leaders had good goals in mind?
I did.
You didn't?
I thought, I thought that capitalism existed because somebody at some point thought it was the best way for everyone to run an economy for everyone concerned. And that's why, that, again, put in very simple terms, but I never really could make sense of the Smiths, the free hand, or the invisible hand, that as long as everybody, went along, then the invisible hand basically took care of things. And then immediately that invisible hand was messed with through regulation. What immediately started with that type of model was laws were created to manipulate that invisible hand. So it certainly long term went against the basic premise of Smith. Nothing. That was the other thing. Nothing in real applied seemed to hold up to a person's theory, and there weren't any changes made. The real life application wasn't adapted in order to meet the goals of the theorist. The theorist's hypotheses. There wasn't any.
There wasn't any what? Theory.
I'm thinking of the best words. The laws that were enacted did not bring relief. It only made it worse, in my opinion, in regard to benefiting all of society as opposed to a few.
What in your background, why would you as a young woman want to have an economic theory? What drove you into that interest?
Well, primarily my father had been in World War II, and I had two brothers in Vietnam, and I wanted war to end. I thought war was ridiculous and stupid because my family had experienced, I had a cousin that died in Vietnam, and just the experiences and the effects of war on my family became.
So you're saying you were interested in peace and figured you had to do something with economics to get peace.
from a young age, Bob, I just remember thinking, we have the technology and the means to make sure that every person on this planet is fed and clothed and sheltered. There should be no reason why everyone's basic needs aren't met in this day and age. This was, mid-late 70s.
So what was your thinking about why that didn't happen? So what was your thinking about why that didn't happen?
I'm sorry, say it again.